A lot has happened in 2020. We were faced with not one, but three crises: COVID-19, a stock market crash, and a national reckoning with racism. We've witnessed record unemployment and the loss of heroes, but also calls for change and people coming together to fight for what's right. So what can we learn from this year? Here to discuss is Tchen, CEO of Time's Up. Tina, always great to have you with us on the show. So to start, how has the pandemic shown how society has failed women specifically?
Well, thanks, Nora. I've been saying all along that what the pandemic has done is actually revealed the fault lines in our economy that many of us have known have always existed, like women being over-indexed in industries that are essential workers and therefore putting themselves at work, but without the benefits of things like paid sick leave. We don't have an infrastructure for that. Or women being over-indexed in industries that were especially vulnerable to layoffs, like the hospitality industry. And so that we know that women have really borne the brunt of this crisis. And in addition to the crises that you named at the outset, I would add a fourth one. We have a caregiving crisis on our hands. With schools out of session, we also see the fault line that has always existed, that women overwhelmingly bear the burden of the care at home, not just of children, but of spouses and loved ones, of the elderly, of themselves. And many women right now, Nora, are feeling like they can't manage it anymore. We have lost 2 million women from the workforce since the pandemic started. Women's labor force participation is at the lowest levels it's been since 1986. So we are losing ground right now on all the gains we have made on women in the workforce. And if I can add one more thing, today it is especially critical because we've now learned that the COVID relief package that is on its way to passage through Congress actually rolls back the paid sick leave provisions that were in the first COVID relief bill from the spring. It actually rolls those mandatory, requirements to at least provide 86 million workers with paid sick leave. And that's a step backwards that we cannot afford to take in the middle of this pandemic.
Tina, it is so disheartening to think about how much progress is being unwound, to your point. But as we will probably face future crises in health, in the economy, what have you, how do we ensure that we don't move backwards again once we make progress and make up for what was lost during this pandemic?
Well, that's why, every crisis presents an opportunity. And this particular crisis, where these fault lines have now been so, revealed to everyone, gives us the opportunity to build back better, to build, for example, the caregiving infrastructure we have never had in this country. For a long time in the United States, we all thought that caregiving was just a private thing for folks to handle on their own. Workers had to figure it out on their own. And we now understand that actually it's something that we as a society needs to take up and needs to work with. So we need to actually build back this caregiving infrastructure. And the reason we need to do that, Nora, is the relationship to power, right? It is the direct relationship to how workers of color, women, get to succeed in the workplace, is if these barriers to their full participation are knocked down. It's what will make women safer in the workplace, to go back to our origin story of Time's Up in combating sexual harassment. That's why we are so passionate about building safe, fair, and equitable workplaces for everyone, because it is addressing that power imbalance that will finally allow women, people of color, LGBTQ workers, disabled workers to really flourish in the workplace. And you know what, Nora? That's better for everyone. That is how, to your question, we build a sustainable, resilient economy that invests in its workers, invests in talent, so we can withstand things like another pandemic. If we had sick leave and if we had paid leave for everyone, right at the start of this pandemic, everyone would be safer and our economy would be stronger.
Tina, can you tell me a little bit more about the Time's Up Measure Up initiative? Because I know you're not just measuring the data, but also listening to stories of women who have struggled. What is the mission behind that initiative?
Well, we launched this initiative actually after the start of the pandemic. We saw that one of the key things that you need to do during a recovery period is collect the data and also tell the stories of workers as you move through this recovery period. Because if you don't, those voices get lost. If we make a wrong step on the policy, we don't know that until it manifests itself years later in a bad outcome. So we want to actually address those issues right away, be in front of policymakers and business leaders and state and local governments right away with this data and with those stories. So we are collecting data and getting it out there. And we also have an oral history project. This is a long-term effort. It's going to go on, for 3 to 5 years, because we know that's how long this recovery is going to take. And we are going to stay with it, being the voice for workers, for women in the workplace.
Tina, very quickly, we've seen corporations, we've seen legislation make moves this year. What do you hope to see in 2021? The number one thing you hope to see as far as equity?
Well, the number one thing I hope to see is that business leaders and public policymakers will make these issues of corporate culture, of diversity and inclusion, top priority. This is as important to the success of our economy, to the success of businesses, as any investment decision that one would make. So I want to see this rise to the top of the list of every single economic agenda across the board.
All right, Tina, thank you as always for your time. We really appreciate the work you're doing. That's Tina Tchen, CEO of Time's Up. Thanks again, Tina.